And thanks everyone for coming. So I'm Yuan Tian, assistant professor from University of Virginia. This is joint work with Ding and Ping from Peking University and De Biao from Wuhan University. So unfortunately, Ding cannot be here, so I'm here to present a paper on behalf of the team. In this work, we look into the differences of Chinese passwords and English passwords. We found that Chinese passwords are so different from English passwords, so that our previous insights and tools for English passwords might not really apply. We believe there's a great potential to study this kind of cross-cultural problems. So with that, I will start. So as Wendy just mentioned, password is everywhere. Nowadays, users from all over the world are using passwords to protect their online accounts. For example, every day we use passwords to log into Gmail services, to log into healthcare services, to log into online banking services. Since the passwords are created by humans, then naturally passwords are influenced by the native languages. There are so many different languages all over the world. So there might be lots of different patterns in the passwords from different languages. However, most of current password security research are focusing only on English passwords. Therefore, these great insights and tools from the English password studies might not really apply to passwords in other languages. Unfortunately, we still have very limited understandings about passwords from other languages. For example, although Chinese is spoken by so many people, we only have 2 papers actually looking into the Chinese passwords. You can see that there's a huge gap here. So to bridge the gap, we want to answer the following 2 research questions. First, what are the structural or semantic characteristics of Chinese passwords comparing to English passwords? Second, given the differences in these passwords, how to measure the strengths of Chinese passwords? In the following, I will show you how we solve these 2 problems. And let's get started with our datasets. In this work, we use 9 password datasets from high-profile websites. These password datasets are from data breaches from 2009 to 2012. 6 are Chinese websites, and 3 are English websites. In total, we have over 100 million passwords. You can tell that these password websites are from different types of web services, such as social forum, gaming, e-commerce, and developer forums. Before I talk about the details of our study, I want to give you a teaser. So this is a table of the top 10 passwords on all the 9 websites we studied. The 6 green ones are Chinese websites, and the 3 red ones are English websites. First, you can probably already tell that both Chinese users and English users believe the best password is 123456. The only exception is CSDN. For CSDN, the password, the most popular password is 1234567889. Can anyone guess the reason?
Character minimum.
Yes. CSDN is the only Chinese website that actually has the password policy that requires length to be above 8 digits. And also, you might also tell that for the Chinese passwords, they mostly are created by digits. And for English passwords, these popular ones are mostly created by letters. If you take a closer look, you might find some of the digit-based Chinese passwords are very easy to guess, like 11111, 123, 123. But some of them might seem to be a little bit random to you, right? What does 5201314 mean? Why so many people choose it? I think maybe some Chinese people already know the answer. It's because it actually means I love you forever. So It turns out the Chinese users, they are using similar pronunciations of the digits to represent this phrase. So actually in Chinese, it is 我爱你一生一世, and in digits, it's 5201314. Does that sound similar to you? We actually found lots of interesting different patterns in Chinese passwords and English passwords. So in the following, I want to give you an overview about the characteristics of Chinese passwords. To have a semantic comparison, we study the letter distribution, the semantic patterns, the length distribution, and frequency distribution of Chinese and English passwords. We found that the letter distribution and semantic patterns are very different, while the length distribution and frequent distribution are actually similar. To save time, we only showcase 2 examples. First, for the top 3 structural patterns, it's quite obvious that most Chinese users actually use passwords created by all digits. Actually, over 50% of Chinese passwords are all digits, while for English passwords, only 10% of them are created from purely digits. For English passwords, the most popular patterns are all created by letters. Of course, this is only a simple analysis of the structural patterns. To further have a deeper understanding about semantic patterns in the passwords, we constructed 22 dictionaries of different semantic categories. So these semantic categories include English names, Chinese pinyin names, and also dates, phone numbers. And I just want to showcase a little bit of our results. So the solid blocks on the left side are Chinese passwords, and the right sides are English passwords. It's quite obvious that Chinese users do not really use English names when they create passwords, and turns out to use lots of Chinese pinyin names in their passwords. We also found Chinese users are more likely to use phone numbers and dates in their passwords. Although we can see that the Chinese passwords and English passwords are so different, they still have some similar features, such as the length distribution of the passwords. You can probably see from the figure, most of the Chinese passwords and English passwords, they fall into the range of length through 5 to 10, and the most popular ones are 6 and 8. So now we understand the similarities and differences of Chinese and English passwords. We want to answer the next question: how to measure the strength of Chinese passwords, and are Chinese passwords stronger or weaker than English passwords? Interestingly, previous 2 papers on this one actually report contradictory results on Chinese password strengths. Bonneau's paper and Auckland 2012 says Chinese passwords are the hardest to guess, while Lee's paper and Usenix 2014 says that the strength of Chinese passwords and English passwords is similar. So to have a systematic understanding about the strength of Chinese passwords, we did the following experiments. First, we choose 2 state-of-art password cracking algorithms, PCFG-based cracking and Markov-based cracking. And for the training dataset, for Chinese websites, we use 4 million Chinese passwords from Duowan website. And for English password, we use 4 million English passwords from Roku website. And to have a fair comparison between the password strengths of Chinese and English, we pair the passwords by the service type. This is because previous study shows that users tend to create passwords based on the importance of the accounts. Therefore, we pair Tian with Roku. Both of them are social forums. And we pair Dodonew with Yahoo. Both of them are portals with e-commerce functionalities. And we pair CSDN with PHBB. Both of them are developer forums. And while studying the password cracking techniques, we found that PCFG has one limitation. So the basic idea of PCFG is to pass the passwords into different components, such as letter segment, digit segment, and symbol segment, and then calculate the probability of the password by the structure so that you can use the probability to create cracking passwords. Well, when we studied Chinese passwords, we found Chinese passwords including many interleaving patterns. For example, 1N, 1D, 1G might probably make no sense for most of English speakers, but this is actually a password translated from a Chinese poem. So it actually makes sense in Chinese to have such passwords. As a result, PCFG algorithms overlook the relationship between the letter segment and digit segment, take them as all independent, so therefore they underestimate the probability of these interleaving patterns. To improve PCFG, we propose to do interleaving conversion, which means we transfer the interleaving passwords into normal passwords to calculate the probability during training phase. We also propose to do input improvement by adding pinyin names and adding dates into PCFG. The reason is that previously we already showed that Chinese users tend more likely to use pinyin names and dates when they create passwords. We found that it did improve PCFG by around 1.7 to 4.3 improvements on different datasets. And we found interleaving conversion and adding pinyin names are helpful, while adding dates is not that helpful. And with the improved PCFG cracking, we identified a very interesting phenomenon. So we found that when the guess number is small, the Chinese passwords are weaker than English passwords. But when the guessing number is large, the Chinese passwords are stronger than the English passwords. You can see the two figures. The left side is about cracking Chinese passwords, and the right side is about cracking English passwords. The X represents the number of guessing, and the Y represents the percentage of passwords getting cracked. So the higher the Y value, the weaker the password. You can tell from the beginning the Chinese passwords is actually weaker than English passwords, but in the end, on the right side, the English password is weaker than Chinese passwords. This is not just limited to PCFG. We also found similar patterns with Markov-based cracking. So to summarize our conclusion for the strength of Chinese password, we found this bifacial security nature of Chinese passwords, which means when the guessing number is small, such as online guessing scenarios, Chinese passwords are weaker than English passwords. But when the guessing number is large, such as for the offline guessing scenarios, Chinese passwords are stronger than their English counterparts. Okay, now we have a better understanding about Chinese passwords. We also have some implication and insights, hopefully to be helpful for us to design better password security schemes. First, for password creation policy, we show that Chinese passwords are more vulnerable to online guessing attacks. As a result, we suggest that for the password policy of Chinese websites, we should have a moderate size of blacklist. And also, we should have good password strength meters. And speaking about password strength meters, we found that many factors are important for selecting the best training set. For example, the language is a bigger factor than the set service type. And the set service type is a bigger factor than the password policy. And the closer the training set to the target passwords, the better. So this suggests that there's no single training set that can fit all the password strength meters. You should really consider the different features of the service to actually choose the best training sets. Okay, and also for password cracking, you should also follow a similar criteria. And also we have some insights about the difference of the PCFG and Markov-based cracking. To summarize, we should study passwords from different cultures because the passwords from different languages are so different. We need to improve our tools and get better understanding about passwords in other languages. And another interesting future work is that to investigate the Chinese password behaviors through user surveys. How do they create password? How do they manage the passwords? With that, I want to give a shout out to my co-authors who cannot be here today, and feel free to ask us questions. And in the end, while you are asking me questions, I also give you some interesting questions to think about. So this is some interesting password from CSDN, which is a developer website. So these Chinese developers that are using Chinese poems to create these passwords. So can you guess actually what does this mean? Don't worry if you are not a Chinese speaker. You can probably search on Google to get some of these answers. So I can also give you some hint. So with that, I'm happy to answer the questions. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. I invite speakers to come up to ask questions. Please introduce yourself and name and affiliation, and ask away.
Hi, I'm Santiago from NYU. I was wondering if in your digging through the data sets, were you able to find keyword patterns that are often common in English data sets? And which are they?
Yes, like for example, some of the English passwords, also English password and Chinese passwords, they also sharing similar keyword patterns. Maybe you are talking about this kind of 1QAZ and 2WSX, this kind of patterns. Yeah, we saw them in both websites, in both kind of categories. But the most common creations for the Chinese password still majority as digits. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Jeffrey Goldberg from 1Password. Thank you very much for this. This is really nice to see this work. I'm wondering if you're finding that the Chinese ones are easier to crack for the small number of guesses and harder for the longer. If this is just a relatively simple parameter in the distribution of passwords, I don't know if you're familiar with David Malone's work on password distributions, but if you were to sort of plot this out on a log scale, it might just be that the slope's a little different.
Yeah, I think that might be a good point. My thoughts about why Chinese passwords are weaker when, like for online guessing scenario, is that most of Chinese passwords, they are created by the digits. So usually for digits, it's very easy to follow into some patterns. So this might be some of the hidden reasons why it's actually easier to crack for the online guessing. But you can have very complex patterns, just like these ones. So yeah, now I want to give you the answer. So they're actually all famous poems in Chinese. So sorry for my bad translation. They're actually very beautiful poems, and they are real passwords from the leakage of a developer web form. So thanks, everyone.